Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. So this is our video presentation of strategy, which is we need to present the characteristic of adult learner and the methods of learning English. The people of the group is me, Aulia, Ahda, Kamila, and Chammy, Aulia, Eacysandra, and Dwi Octavelinasari. Without any further ado, let's move into the characteristic of adult learner. For the first is a distinct group. A distinct group is the adult learners to vary distinctly from each other in terms of their needs, problems, requirements, attitudes, and outlook that they bring to the learning situation. There are also variations in their age, experience, levels of knowledge, communication, and learning styles that makes them distinct from the others. The adult learners may belong to majority or minority groups or race and ethnicity, hail from different parts of the world, follow different religions, and socially belong to different sex, class, and caste group. Next is autonomous, independent, and self-directed. Is the independent, on the other hand, is not being independent on someone or something by being free. Adult learners are self-governing, self-dependent, and self-directing, which is they are already know their needs and they are governing their self for the learner. Next is goal-oriented individuals. Is adults set their goals very clearly and elaborately in whatever activity that they involve themselves in. Their participation in learning activities also involves achievement of the unanswered goals. And next is voluntary learners. Voluntary learners is adult learners join learning process without any pressures, compulsions, or coercion. They are voluntary learners, which is like in the class, if the lecturer asks for the students to answer their question without the lecturer pointing to someone, the students are already participate to answer the question. Next is the result-oriented. Result-oriented is coming voluntarily to the learning situation. The adult learners are highly result-oriented learners. They usually have a definite result in their mind when they join a teaching learning program. If the result they are anticipating out of learning activities aren't achieved, they may even out of the learning program. Next is the relevancy-oriented. Relevancy-oriented is adult learners have to know how relevant the learning process is to them. How is it geared up to meet their needs? And next is wealth of experience and knowledge. As individuals progress chronologically in age, they become mature by accumulation of vast wealth of experience and knowledge. And the next is respect. Respect is often observed that the adult learners are often denied their adulthood. They are treated as people devoid of brains, told what is right and what is wrong, and the worst being that they treat with disrespect. Hence, the facilitators have to explore and unravel the vast sea of experience and knowledge of their adult learners and have to treat them with utmost respect when they enter the learning situation. And next is self-esteem and self-image. The building of positive self-image and a high self-esteem should be the goal of any learning situation. Research further indicates that emotions cannot be separated from intellect learning. If the learner is stressed or anxious, he or she will not be able to learn.
Hello everyone, I'm Dwi Octavelinasari, so I will explain to you about the next point, the differences between young language learners and adult learners. So The age of our student is a major factor in our decision about how and what to teach. People of different age have a different need, competencies, and cognitive skills. Or it can be said that the each student has different abilities, characteristics, and experiences according to their age. So this is I will explain about the difference between young learners, adolescents, and adult learners. Okay, check it out. The first is young children. Young children, especially those up to the age of 9 or 10, learn differently from older children, adolescents, and adults in the following ways. That's why in this material I put old children and adolescents in young learners, because older children because young children and then adolescents is included in the young learners. The first is they respond to meaning even if they don't understand individual words. Then they often learn directly rather than indirectly. They take the information from all sides, learning from everything around them rather than only focusing on the precise topic they are being taught. The next, their understanding comes just not explanation, but also from what they see and hear, and crucially have a chance to touch and interact with. They find abstract concepts such as grammar rules difficult to grasp. They generally display an enthusiasm for learning and curiosity about the world around them. And then they have a need for individual attention and approval from the teacher. They are keen to talk about themselves and respond well to learning that use themselves and their life as main topic in the classroom. And then they have a limited attention span unless activities are extremely engaging, because the easy bored and losing interest after 10 minutes or so. So I think these characteristics will occur in young children between 3 until 6 or 7 years old. The next, the ideal classroom for young children. So this is we have to know, we as the teacher, we have to know how to teach them, and this is the ideal classroom. Firstly, we will want the classroom to be bright and colorful, with windows the children can see out of, and with enough room for different activities to be taking place, so they have not feel bored, and they will study enjoying, happy, because the children always move to the one place to the other place, and they very happy to look around them with a beautiful classroom. And the next is we might expect the student to be working in groups in different part of classroom, changing their activity every 10 minutes or so. So we don't just give the assignment or activities individually, but we have to give them activity in a group. For example, we have a topic about planting, so we divide in every group and we do the activity together. And the next point, children love discovering things, and because they respond well to being asked to use their imagination, they may well be involved in puzzle-like activities, in making things, in drawing things, in games, and physically movement or in songs. So young children is studying with playing, studying with happy. So we don't give them like the material reading, writing, but we have to give more listening and speaking, and we have the technique or method with the puzzle, and then creating something, drawing, and we give some games, or we give some the sing song, and let's and yes, with other activities that very interesting for them. And the last is a good primary classroom makes play and learning in an atmosphere of cheerful and supportive harmony. This is the mind of the mind topic, main point before the third point. Yes, they have to various of activities, but they have to study with playing. The next is the important point that must be understood by the teachers when giving material. So this is about material, giving the material. The first one is the activity should be simple enough for the children to understand what is expected of them. So the tasks should be within their abilities, and it needs to be achievable, but at the same time sufficiently stimulating for them to feel satisfied with their work. So we have to give the instruction, give the activity with clearly, and use the language based on their ability. And the next point is the activities should be largely orally based indeed. So with the very young children, listening activities will take up a large proportion of class time. If we want to teach the young children and we will give the material, we have to a lot of time or a lot of method by the orally. We giving activities with speaking, and then listening, and yes, we always using oral. And the last point, writing activities should be used sparingly with younger children. Children of 6 or 7 years old are often not yet proficient in the mechanic of writing in their own language. Yes, because young children, they just listening and speaking and a little bit of writing. So the next is adolescence. There are characteristics about adolescents. First, with their greater ability for abstract thought and their passionate commitment to what they are doing. Next, most of them understand the need for learning and with the right goals can be responsible enough to. So the next is adolescence. There are characteristics of adolescents. First, with their greater ability for abstract thought, their passionate commitment to what they are doing. and then most of them understand the need for learning and with the right goals can be responsible enough to do what is asked of them. Adolescence is born up about how search for identify and need for self-esteem. And then adolescents need to feel good about themselves and valued. Problems with teenagers as resulting from the teacher's failure to build bridge between what they want and different of student thought and experience. And they advocate linking language teaching for more closely to the students' everyday interest through the use of humanistic teaching. And the last, they must be encouraged to respond to text and situation with their own thought and experiences rather than just by answering questions and doing abstract learning activity. So in adolescence it is more increased, the ability is more increased rather than young children. They have many experiences, they can answer the question based on their experience, based on their understanding, and then yes, this is have a good ability and then passionate rather than young children. The next, adult learners. Adult language learners are notable of special characteristic. First, they can engage with abstract thought. This suggests that we as a student don't rely exclusively on activities such as games and songs. They may be appropriate for some students. And the next, they have a wide range of life experiences to draw on. And next, they have expectation about the learning process and they already have their own set pattern of learning. And next, adults tend on the whole to be more disciplined than other age groups, and crucially they are often prepared to struggle on despite boredom. And the last, unlike young children and teenagers, they often have a clear understanding of why they are learning and what they want to get out of it. So that's mean the motivation is a critical factor in successful learning and knowing what they want to achieve. Many adults are able to sustain a level of motivation by holding on to distant goals in a way that teenagers find more difficult. So adult learners is a very I say perfect student because they have more experiences, more abilities, and then more of understanding, and they can create something based on their imagination. So the next is, however, adults are never entire problem-free learners and they have a number of characteristics which can sometimes make learning and teaching problematic. So adults also have like disadvantage, not disadvantage but negative effect in teaching, in learning teaching. The first one is they can be critical of teaching method. So their previous learning experiences may have predisposed them to one particular methodological style which make them uncomfortable with unfamiliar teaching patterns. So conversely, they may be hostile to certain teaching and learning activities which replace the teaching they received earlier in their educational career. So, in my understanding, because adult learners have more abilities and imagination and also critical, they always critical about everything. So this is difficult for a teacher to uh, to face the adult learners. And the second is many older adults worry that their intellectual powers may be diminishing with age. They are concerned to keep their creative powers alive to maintain a sense of generativity. So if we more adult, semakin tua usia, memang kita akan semakin sempurna dalam pemikiran, akan tetapi jika kita itu mengalami seperti penuaan, maka ada efek seperti mungkin lupa atau daya pikirnya sudah berkurang. I think that's all.
Next is method of English learning. Method of English learning are the grammar translation method. It is based on the learning grammar rules and vocabulary of the language. One of its main objectives is that students become able to translate from one language to another. Reading and writing basically works, leaving aside the more oral expression and comprehension. And next is the direct method. It is focused on preparing students to use the language in order to achieve communication. Next is the Suggestopedia. The Suggestopedia is the approach was based on the notion that positive suggestion will make the learner more receptive and in turn stimulate learning to some extent. Lozanov holds that a relaxed but focused state is the perfect state for a learning process. In order to create this relaxed state, Suggestopedia makes use of music, a comfortable and relaxing environment, and a close relationship between the teacher and the student, almost like the parent-child relationship. And next is audiolingual and audiovisual method. It is closely linked to behaviorism, the elements of repetition and habit formation. This method proposes a learning process based on listening and oral production as opposed to writing and reading. And next is total physical response. It refers to coordination between speech and action. It is based on learning the language through physical and motor activity. The method involves playful movements, reduces stress, and creates a positive mood in the student, thereby aiding the learning process. Next is the communicative language teaching. The main focus is on helping students to create meaning as opposed to help them to acquire precise grammatical structures or acquire a level similar to that of a native. It is aimed for students to acquire the language by focusing on the development of communicative competence. To achieve this goal, teachers use materials that focus on the needs to express and understand. Next is task-based language and teaching. It tries to define what should be taught from an analysis of language as a tool for communication, not as a formal system. It is based on an approach where various tasks as the central unit of planning in learning the language are used. Next is difference of methods. It will present by Chammy, Aulia.
So next, I'm going to explain about the differences of methods in English language teaching. There are 7 different methods. The first one is grammar translation method, or we usually call it GTM. Time and place, predominant method in Europe during the 19th century. Person behind this method is Seidenstacker and his friend Johann Carplus and Meidinger. Advantages of GTMs are reading and writing are the main learning objective. Second one is the selected vocabulary is based on the text used and is taught through a list of words with its translation equivalent. Students memorize. The last one is the sentence is the basic unit of learning and practice of new language. Most lessons are based on translation into the mother tongue. The disadvantages are it gives students the erroneous idea that a language is a collection of words that are isolated and independent. Second one is decreases student motivation since it leads to frustration and boredom. The last one is equal relevance is not attributed to the four major skills of language learning: listening, speaking, reading, and writing. Second method is direct method. Time and place, born in France and Germany in the late 19th century and early 20th century, and was consecrated in the United States. Person behind these methods are Sever and Maximilian Berlitz. The advantages are it involves the immersion of students in the target language in the same way that they learn their mother tongue. The second one is it is focused on preparing students to use the language in order to achieve communication. The last one is the role of students is not passive. The disadvantages are it is based on the idea that the target language can be learned exactly in the same way as the mother tongue. The second one is the condition for second language acquisition are very different native language acquisition. The third one is the application to avoid using the native language often leads to complicated explanation in the target language. The third method is audiolingual method. Time and place during and after World War II between 1961 and 1963. The person behind this method is Moulton. The advantages are listening and oral production should be taught before writing and reading. Second one is instruction and exercises are given in the target language. Mistakes are carefully avoided because they lead to the formation of bad habits. The disadvantages are repetition as a learning method is used and no opportunity is given to students to create anything new or spontaneous. Second one is students become very good at the practice of speaking but are unable to use the patterns fluently in natural communication contexts. And the last one is it may be a mistake to regard audio-visual materials as a teaching method in themselves instead of as a didactic tool. Next, total physical response. Time and place in 1960. Person behind this method is James Asser. Advantages of these methods are involves playful movement, reduces stress and creates a positive mood in the student, thereby aiding their learning process. Second one is the child develops listening skills before speaking skills in the initial phases of language acquisition. At this stage, children can understand complex expression that they cannot produce or imitate spontaneously. And the last one is once listening skills are acquired, speech evolves naturally and almost effortlessly. The disadvantages are students may feel uncomfortable with certain exercises. Second one, this method is more suitable for beginners and younger ages. And last one, you cannot teach all the skills of a language through this method. If overused, it can become repetitive. Next, we have communicative language teaching. Time and place unknown. Person behind this method are Widowson, Canlin, Christopher Bromfield, and Kit Johnson. The advantages of these methods are the development of communicative competence in students, involving students in the learning process, giving equal emphasis to the four language skills: speaking, listening, reading, and writing. The disadvantages are More vocabulary is required to support the functional use of language. It provides few guidelines on how to have the vocabulary. And the last one, it overemphasizes the concept of communication. And then we have task-based language learning. Time and place in 1987, and the person behind this method is Prabhu. The advantages are it is representative of communication processes in real life. It involves all students in understanding, producing, and interacting in the target language. The last one is it is intentionally directed towards language learning. The disadvantages are, as with all working groups, some students may take a secondary role and rely on others to do most of the work and learning. Next one is the newly acquired knowledge can be lost if there is no consolidation and assimilation work during the station. Last one is the difficulty of implementing task-based learning where classes are large with limited and insufficient space. Last method is Suggestopedia. Time and place unknown, and the person behind this method is Georgy Lozanov. The advantages are positive suggestion will make the learner more receptive and in turn stimulate learning to some extent. Next one, use of music, a comfortable and a relaxing environment and a close relationship between the teacher and the student, almost like the parent-child relationship. Last one is the use of music both in the background and as an accompaniment to certain activities can be motivating and relaxing. The disadvantages are language teaching materials are not used in this method. No apparent theory of language in Suggestopedia and no obvious order in which items of language are presented. And the last one, these methods are arguably now outdated.